Michael Clark for the road trip, reporting to you from Vancouver for the media launch for the 2014 Mazda 3. Now, you've known the Mazda 3 name in Canada for some time, and we've certainly enjoyed it from the first generation on up. It's had its performance derivatives, such as the Mazda Speed 3, which unfortunately we haven't found any information out on today. But what we have here is the next level when it comes to the Sky Active suite of technologies. Now, we've seen this already on Mazda vehicles such as the CX-5 as well as the Mazda 6. Now, what is Sky Active to the unsky active? Well, imagine, if you will, that you could take everything that you know about automotive design and automotive construction, and even the ways that we connect with the vehicle, and completely erase it and go with a clean sheet. Well, that's part of what we're going to be dealing with today in looking at the Mazda 3, which is available in sedan, as well as the Sport 5-door editions. Now, we also have the Sky Active power plants, and big news here is the fact that the 2.5-liter Sky Active, the same engine that powers the Mazda 6, well, you can get it in specific versions of the Mazda 3. And with the type of power that we know it kicks up for the 6 sedan, we're going to be very excited about what it will do on the back roads here around Vancouver. The other thing that needs to be considered when it comes to vehicle design is how are you interacting with it? And most importantly, is connectivity leading to disconnectivity? Is there too many things going on in the vehicle when we think about how we integrate with smartphones and other types of internet-capable devices that take us away from actually paying attention? Well, there's also going to be talk about safety nannies, things such as blind spot warnings and the abilities for the cars to pre-brake in an emergency collision situation. That's all good stuff, but also we have to remember that part of the Mazda experience is going to be the zoom zoom. So we're going to take it out on the roads here around Vancouver, give you a feel for what this car is all about, and speak to the movers and shakers when it comes to all things Mazda 3. And if you've got thoughts, feelings, or questions about the Mazda 3, send an email to steelbeltedmind@gmail.com. Buckle up, it's time for the road trip. Well, welcome to my little Zen waterfall here, and we're taking a look at the design language of the Mazda 3, and it follows the Kodo soul of motion concepts. Now, what you're looking at as you look at the side profiles and the way that everything flows together on the vehicle, be it sedan or be it the 5-door Sport, is the idea that motion is automatically occurring in the body panels. Did you get all that? Because I think it's not moving right now, but it definitely has a look to it that you're not going to be expecting when it comes to the compact sedans. Now, this particular one is the GT, which has the 2.5-liter Sky Active 4. Now, that's the same 2.5-liter Sky Active that powers the Mazda 6 sedan, and we already enjoy what that's been able to do for performance. So to take this particular one with horsepower and torque numbers that almost match in a package of this size kind of makes you start to wonder whether or not we're actually going to be needing the likes of the Mazda Speed 3. Yeah, we need that too. One of the most interesting under-the-hood technologies that will be arriving for the Mazda 3 is in the GT trim level, and it's something that, well, Sounds a little weird when you actually explain the name of it. It's called E-Loop. And what that is a system that works with the alternator that actually decouples. I guess you could say that the alternator has a split personality. And what happens during a braking event, and it's important to note that this has nothing to do with the brakes. It's not tied into it. It's just simply as you're applying the brakes, what happens is that the alternator decouples and it starts feeding power into a capacitor. Now the capacitor stores that power, and then what happens is that when the vehicle starts up again, the electrical power that is required to run the vehicle is not coming off of the alternator, it's actually coming from the capacitor. The alternator is essentially freewheeling. So what does that mean to you when it comes to efficiencies? Well, you can actually get as good as 5 liters to 100 kilometers on the highway with the E-Loop system. Now, remember what we said here is that you're not dealing with a system that requires a lot of architecture. In fact, the unit, the capacitor that fits up front, well, it's not too much bigger than a shoebox. And it's also crash tested, crush proof, so you don't have to worry about releasing all that power if you're in a crash event. You don't have batteries in the back. You don't have any cumbersome architecture. You don't have things in the way of your cargo. So it's a neat system. And in respect to how much economy it actually gives you over not having it, well, it's good to note that we're still dealing with 5.1 liters per 100 kilometers highway with the new 2.5 Sky Active in this configuration. That's a considerable improvement over the MZR engines that existed before when it came to the Mazda 3.
So with the efficiencies of the Sky Active gasoline engines and transmissions, especially when coupled with the new IE-Loop system, we've been able to achieve some pretty, I think, remarkable fuel economy. So if we look at the Mazda 3 year over year from 2013 to the new 2014 model, the 2.5 liter Sky Active gasoline engine equipped with IE-Loop is achieving fuel economy that's essentially the same as last year's Mazda 3 with the 2.0 liter Sky Active engine. So it's a pretty incredible accomplishment, considering that the 2.5 liter is generating somewhere between 20 and 25% more torque everywhere compared to that 2 liter engine. So you're getting more performance and the same fuel economy. Now, to speak specifically to what IE-Loop contributes, in the real world, we've seen about a 5% improvement in fuel economy attributable to the IE-Loop system. The one thing that I'll point out is those fuel economy numbers that I just mentioned are the certification numbers. And the EPA certification for fuel economy actually is done with a very low electrical load. So the certification figures do not represent the kind of benefit that you'll actually see in the real world from the IE-Loop system. So the actual real world numbers are probably even better than the EPA figures.
Signature lighting is going to be a big part of the new Mazda 3, and you're going to see things like the halo style of LEDs. This one has the projector style of headlamps, and also HID xenons are available, which are both adaptive and have the ability to level them manually. There's also been additional things that have occurred here in respect to improving the vision for the driver, and one of those elements is the A-pillars, and the A-pillars have been repositioned to assist with a better viewing area, as well to help with the side viewing. A lot of manufacturers in this segment tend to attach the mirrors to the bottom of the A-pillars, and that can really get in the way of seeing around it and such. So what they've done here is they've attached the mirrors to the doors in such a way that it gives you a nice clean look. It has the repeaters on the high-end models so that people on the sides definitely know your intentions. And when you get into the upper scale trim levels, you also get the heated exterior mirrors, which are definitely appreciated for Canadian winters. Now, one of the most interesting elements to the dashboard of the new Mazda 3 is on the upscale models, the GT Trim Edition. Now, you're going to notice this little piece that pops up every time that you start up the vehicle. And we've heard of heads-up displays before, but the problem with some heads-up displays is that you're always going to be dealing with what you can do and what you can't do with the windshield. So to actually project information such as speed and turn-by-turn navigation, if you've got that abilities, to do that with a conventional system and putting it onto the glass involves quite a bit of architecture and something that really you don't have that kind of room when it comes to a vehicle of this size. So what they've done is they put together this unique system which uses a mirror image. Now, what I like about it is that it sticks to driving information only. You're not getting things on this screen like some other competing screens, such as audio information or which satellite station picture that you want it to load up. No, this stays really basic. And that's the whole idea of the human-machine interface concepts that we're seeing on this Mazda 3. There's only going to be so much information that you would ever want to appear on a screen like this. Much like there's only so much information you would want to have appear on the touch screens. Now, the whole idea of putting these particular items within reach but without distracting the driver, it has a lot to do with the concept I spoke of earlier. It's this idea that connectivity doesn't need to be disconnectivity.
We've packaged this on a separate screen. There's actually a screen that pops up from the instrument cluster in front of the steering wheel. And because we have the freedom to kind of curve that screen as necessary, we've been able to adjust the focus such that the image that you're looking at appears as if it's over the hood of the car, somewhere in front of the windshield. The focal distance is about 1,500 millimeters away. What that means is that your eyes need to do less adjusting to switch between looking at the car that's in front of you and looking at the information that's on the screen. If we had packaged the system so that it was projected on the windshield instead, it would have been much harder to achieve this effect of having the focal point further away from you. Now, in terms of what kind of information do we display, our feeling is that we can't or we shouldn't have anything presented in front of the driver that's not related to the task at hand. So what you won't see on the display are things like text and tweets or audio information, things like that. You'll only see things that are pertinent to driving. So vehicle speed information, turn-by-turn directions if you have a destination in the navigation, active safety warnings, things like that. But everything presented in front of the driver, whether it's in the meter cluster or in this active driving display, are things that are only related to driving.
Okay, well, let me try to explain exactly what this whole idea means. The idea that we can work in harmony with our vehicle interiors and our systems without them becoming horrifying distractions at the worst possible time. So on this particular trim level, the GT, we get much of the high-end equipment that we would expect here, which means we've got navigation, which means we have all the soft touch materials that you could imagine. Beautifully trimmed interior, and to this date, I'd have to say of the Mazda design that we've seen within all of their different products, one of the best executed. Hard to believe that it's happening on a vehicle that starts from under $16,000 for the base GX sedan. Now, as we had mentioned, everything that you need to know here is going to be in your face when it comes to driving information. And I have to admit, I think of the Honda Civic when it comes to the idea of putting the tachometer front and center and having the speed given to you in a digital readout. So a little bit of a different layout design here with this system on the Mazda 3, but still very clean, very easy to understand. Same thing with the information that is given to you on the heads-up display. And now you can, of course, adjust that angle and as well as the information that is presented here. But the whole idea is to keep that information clean and concise. Now, as we move throughout the rest of the piano black infused interior as well as the aluminum trim, you're going to notice that even around the HVAC vents, everything is exquisitely carved. Everything is exquisitely crafted. In fact, this piece here, the touch screen, it almost looks like something that you could detach and put into a sleeve and take with you, but it's fused into the vehicle. It's not going anywhere. Now, you can use the touchscreen functions, but you can only use them when the vehicle is stationary. That brings us to the Commander, the human machine interface commander that brings us into all of these different systems simply by turning a knob, but not as knobbish as some of the other systems that we've seen that pretty much require quite a bit of reading to figure out how to use. If you've never used something like this before, this is going to be one of the easiest systems that you've ever touched because it's got easy home screens, easy abilities to go back if you've made a mistake, and also the ability to go into one screen, work on a navigation address, for example, have to leave because you want to go and give a thumbs up to a song on the internet radio, and then come back to right where you left off. You don't have to start over. Now that's what I call humans and machines working together.
So we've done two really cool things with the Mazda Connect system that we have in the 2014 Mazda 3. One of them is that the system itself, from a hardware standpoint, is completely modular. So we've decoupled all of the components of the system. The heart of the system is what we call the CMU, or the Connectivity Master Unit, and all of the other ancillary devices are connected to it, like the display, the CD player, the satellite radio tuner, and so on. What this allows us to do, actually there's two things that are pretty cool. One, instead of having all of the hardware in one box behind the screen, in the instrument panel, we can move the ancillary devices to other places in the interior if we want, so down into the footwell or under the seats. That's what allows us to redesign the IP such that the surface of the dash is lower than it was before. The other thing that it allows us to do is, if certain things are not necessary in the future, for example, let's say that people don't think CDs are necessary in a few years, which I think is the way it's going, it's relatively easy for us at that point to just simply take the CD player out of the mix without having to redesign the head unit entirely. There's another thing that we've done to make the system more future-proof, and that is that the operating system is fully updatable by reflashing. So a few years ago, Stitcher and AHA Radio were not important things to have. Today they are. A few years from now, if they're not cool and there's something that's newer and better, we can write applications for that newer and better thing and then simply update the OS to be compatible.
And now it's time to tell you about the drive of the Mazda 3 for 2014. The big news is the 2-liter Skyactiv engine. Now, we had a chance to drive the 2-liter Skyactiv engine in the previous generation of the Mazda 3, and to be quite honest, we found it wanting. But what we did find out is that the third-generation vehicle has the 421 Skyactiv exhaust header, and believe me, that completely wakes up the car. Inside, the human-machine interface has been done in such a way that there is no concerns for driver fatigue in the usual sense. The 2-liter Skyactiv is going to be plenty for people who are looking at both the 6-speed manual as well as the automatic transmission choices. Even the base interior looks like it's been sculpted for concept car use. Don't forget, there's also the safety nannies, such as blind spot information systems. Considering that the car is now getting economy levels with the larger 2.5-liter engine that were normally reserved for the 2-liter, it's our recommendation to step up to get that GT. Hi, I'm Michael Clark, reporting to you from Austin, Texas, with the new 2014 Chevrolet Silverado. But it's not just any Silverado. This is the Silverado High Country. And you're saying to yourself, well, what exactly is a high country Silverado? Well, I somehow remember names like this back in the day on Chevrolet K5 Blazers. Something of that nature did exist at one point, but the one thing that really hasn't existed for Chevrolet is a highfalutin competitor to the truck that's in its own backyard, and that is the Sierra Denali from GMC. So what they've decided to do with this new rethink for the Silverados as well as the Sierra is give Silverado that particular class. And let's tell you something about that class. It's not something to sneeze at, considering the fact that there's plenty of trucks in Canada that you can get spec'd out for over $60,000, and The big question is, do you got to spend that extra money? Well, we're going to take a look at the additional features today on the road trip of the 2014 Silverado with the high country trim. Tell you if it's worth the money. And if you've got thoughts, feelings, or questions about anything automotive, send an email to steelbeltedmind@gmail.com. Buckle up. It's time for the high country road trip. Now, the big question is how exactly do you take something that you could get in the work truck edition for even under $30,000 at the base MSRPs for a regular cab, beat the heck out of a truck, do some work with it, get it dented, get it dirty. But then there's that type of person who wants to have the capability of a truck, but also wants to go to the club, who also wants to show it off at the symphony. And how do you do that with a truck? Well, we've had trucks like this before. They've had names like Denali from GMC, but we also have competitors now. We have the Ford F-150 and the limited editions, as well as the lesser Platinum. I don't exactly know when limited became more than platinum, but let's talk about what that means. If you're going to be doing something like this, you got to show off in the right areas. And one of the things that you got to do is bring up the bright work. And that explains why we also have a slightly different grille on this 2014 Silverado High Country, as well as these 20-inch wheels, which are specific to the model. You've got the chrome toppers on the mirrors, high country, high glossy chrome, as well as chrome body moldings. Now we've got the full-length running boards here as well, including the chrome handles. Other than that, the things that you will notice are a little different and ties in with some of the competition is the body color bumpers. Now, there is a chrome step bumper available for the rear, but you're dealing with the painted effect here. So it's trying to look as untruck-like as possible. And as for the rest of the exterior, some other things that you will notice is that it has a very large, very chromed exhaust pipe. Step inside the Silverado High Country and you'll notice the usual luxury upticks, such as the soft dash pad cover, the accent piping, and an exclusive saddle brown interior. I'm just glad the stitching isn't in my line of sight reflection on the windshield. The front doors get all the trimmings that you would expect. Unfortunately, the rear doors are missing the soft topper that, well, gets missed by a lot of truck manufacturers. There's bright trim on the rocker panels, but let's get into what people really want to know about this truck, and that's where the price is. Because for $53,315, you can get yourself into the base trim for the High Country, and it definitely gives you a lot of what you see here. There's a couple of differences, remember, for powertrain. You can get the 5.3-liter V8 or the 6.2-liter that you're going to be hearing about a little bit later on in the program. There's the MyLink Chevrolet system, as well as a handy backup camera. The High Country also has the integrated brake controller. All High Country Edition Silverados for Canada are going to be equipped with four-wheel drive. In the US, two-wheel drive versions are available. And with the 3.42 axle ratio, this particular truck with the four-wheel drive configuration is easily going to be able to tow in the low 9,000-pound range. The new 6.2-liter Ecotec 3 V8 has plenty of giddy-up. It's SAE certified at 420 horsepower and 460 foot-pounds of torque, which now makes it at the top of its class for light-duty trucks. The all-aluminum block employs the trifecta of Ecotec 3 technologies: direct injection, variable valve timing, and active fuel management, turning this V8 into a V4. Cheryl Balsley explains.
Well, we've used the three technologies together in order to give a very efficient package. Utilizing DI, we've been able to increase the compression ratios across the board in all the packages. The 4.3 and 5.3 are at 11:1. The 6.2 is at 11.5:1 compression ratio. You get a very efficient combustion system. Use that in conjunction with the variable valve timing and then the active fuel management, and it gives you a very powerful yet very efficient package. We've got a very, very efficient water pump. Works well under all the towing conditions. From a lubrication standpoint, we've gone to a two-stage variable displacement oil pump. So when you're running around the lower speeds where we don't need to be pumping the additional oil, we'll run the oil pump in a lower pressure mode. When the demands get a little higher, you get higher speeds, you need more oil to the bearings and everything, the oil pump will actually switch into a higher pressure mode at higher engine speeds.
When it comes to luxury pickup trucks, for General Motors, that name has been GMC Denali for many years. And the new one for 2014 continues the signature items, such as the grille, the special wheels that are monogrammed with the Denali nameplate, and plenty of bright work. The new signature GMC elements are here too, such as the projector-style headlamps. Inside, the usual luxury trimmings, with fine leathers as well as stitchwork, and plenty of indicators as to what you're actually in over a basic truck, including custom embroidery on the headrests. At an MSRP of $58,890, the GMC Denali is strictly a four-wheel drive animal, the standard engine being the 5.3-liter Ecotec 3 V8.
Go, man, go! Go for true sports car feel and handling. Go for thrills and excitement. Go for the powerful thrust of turbocharged scat. This is the sizzling Corvair Monza Spider with a whopping big 150 horsepower turbo air engine. Beneath this bright, fresh scrubbed look, a hurricane of power waits to be unleashed by an exhaust-driven turbo supercharger. There's also a 4-speed transmission for extra lift on the takeoff. And for dazzling middle and high-speed acceleration. There's a tachometer and special pressure and temperature gauges to tell you what's going on behind you. But what's up front, you can see for yourself. And when the going gets rough, you can count on turbocharged power and a heavy-duty suspension to see you through. But the real fun of the exciting new Corvair Monza Spider is the fun of looking ahead.